Welcome to this video which offers a summary of the EU legislation that you need to know about. Professional drivers need to follow important rules about driving, and these rules are usually detailed within often complex legislation. In the EU, there is an expectation for all commercial truck and bus drivers to complete a daily checklist for basic vehicle maintenance. It is described in Directive 2014/47 and Regulation 1071/2009. You must check, as a minimum, tyres and wheels, lights and indicators, and mirrors and brakes. Check for fluid leaks and fluid levels, and be sure the bodywork is secure and that nothing can come off. It's also advisable to check that the load is secure and that technology such as cameras and sensors are working effectively. The important thing to remember here is that you need to look and touch. Sometimes a defect can only be discovered when you actually feel around the vehicle. The legislation requires this approach. It's not just drivers that need to think about legislation. Your employer must also understand what's required of them. Often, a license to run a transport business is only granted when your employer agrees to a program of routine maintenance. This is also described in Regulation 1071/2009. In addition to the routine maintenance, all vehicles in the EU must meet legislation on something called the Periodic Technical Inspection, PTI, which sets the minimum safety level and environmental standards for vehicle roadworthiness. It is governed by Directive 2014/45. In 2025, the rules were changed to include electric vehicles, stricter emission testing, digital certificates, annual tests for older cars, improved odometer fraud prevention, and cross-border test validity. There is legislation which affects how long you can work for. The Working Time Directive 2002/15 means you can work for a maximum of 48 hours a week. It can increase to 60 hours, but the average number of hours over a fixed reference period must be 48 hours or less. Your employer can choose how many hours you do, and they work out the average based on a 17 to 26 week period. You also need to take a 30-minute break for every 6 hours of work. The Driver's Hours Regulation 561/2006 means you're limited to driving activities before breaks are needed. You can drive for a maximum of 9 hours a day, which can be increased to 10 hours 2 times in the week. There is a maximum of 90 hours driving every 2 weeks and 56 hours every week. If you do 56 hours, then you can only drive for 34 hours in the second week. You need to take a break of 45 minutes for every 4.5 hours of driving. It does not mean non-stop driving, it means cumulative. In other words, if you drive, then unload, then load, then drive, then tidy up the yard, only the driving bit counts towards the driving limit. Your break can be taken as 45 minutes or one 15-minute break followed by one 30-minute break. You can only do it this way. If you take 14 minutes, it will not count. Finally, you need to think about your overnight, or between shifts, rest. It must be at least 11 hours, which can be reduced to 9 hours 3 times a week. However, you need to make up that time in the following week. In other words, if you shorten the amount of rest you have, then you will need extra rest the following week. The standard weekly rest is 45 hours. Again, it can be reduced, this time to 24 hours. However, you will need to make up that lost time by the 3rd working week. Congratulations! You have completed this lesson on EU legislation. Be sure to complete the quiz, and don't forget to download your certificate. Check out other lessons in this module to learn more about specific legislation for driving a truck or bus.